Hi, welcome to Chapter 11. We are going to basically be covering in very detailed tables and forms. Some different things we can do there as well. Some of this we'll be able to review from CIS120. So we'll do a little bit of enhancing. We'll talk about a few more features, things we can really do to kind of straighten up and kind of take our tables and forms and kind of really make them look nice and kind of across the board. So the tutorial this week is going to first cover styling a table. And if we were to look at the table, it's just a simple table. It's got text across the top. It's got this caption. It's got what, 3 columns, probably some table header rows. If we look at text here, yes, we've got a table, we've got a caption, we've got a column group. Column groups are a way for us to basically format columns. So a column group is a group of columns. So we have columns, COLs, which are tags, and then we have a group. We can group them together. So basically what we have done here is we've created a column group. We've got 3 columns: product, price, and rating. We've got IDs going on here, so there's probably some type of tag for that. Am I on the right one? Yeah. So let's see. That'll be an ID, price, and rating, and we basically have our TH, which then scope. In this case is relating it to the columns up here. So up here we've got ID, and down here I've got scope column for this table header, and it's got product, so it will basically go in line with that. So that's what all the scope is doing there. Okay, so get back to the book. Okay, so this is basically we want to get the table to look like. Okay, notice we've got our table 1, which is our caption, is up here to the right. Currently, it's right smack dab, well, close to the middle. So very first thing we do is we are going to add a new class to our CSS. So I'll highlight this and copy it, and I will then put it at the very end and save it and refresh, see what happens. First of all, it's a class called inventory, and it changes the font family, it changes the width, and the margin top now has 25 pixels. So if we were to look over here, do we see a dot? Yeah, so here's our class inventory. So this is going to affect the entire table. It's going to change the font. It's going to change the is it padding top? Margin top, and it's going to make the width of each one of those items 100%. So I go over here, I hit refresh, we're going to see the font change, and we're going to see some other width changes and some margin top changes, and voila, yes. So when we talk about margin top in this case, a margin top affects just the table itself. Notice the gap here increased. This table caption is part of the table. Okay, so font changed, table margin, the top changed, and so let's continue on. So the very next thing we want to do is we're going to change the caption within the inventory class. We want to change the text alignment to right, we want to change the font size to 0.85 ems, and the margin bottom, we're going to actually increase the spacing at the bottom of this to 10 pixels. So I add this to our, and I do a save, come back over here, and this time keep your eye on this caption up here, and when I do a refresh, boom, we notice that the font size changed. It is now right aligned, and we've got a little more spacing below the caption now. Okay, so we are going to, let's just go ahead and add this and we'll talk about it. Okay, so we look at it, it says the .inventory TD, so any table TD, the column of a table, anything inside of the inventory class, and also the table heading. Usually when we change the overall of a column, we usually include the headers as well. The only time we treat headers differently is when we want to change the font or the background or something like that. So we want to have the columns and the table headers to have a font size of 1.1 ems, and we do want a border of 1 pixel solid, and then basically whatever color that is. So I do a save, I come over here and do a refresh, and voila, every cell now has a border around it. Okay, so we'd like to kind of make sure that the borders are all touching, so it looks like one solid border, not a separate border the way they are right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to add this border collapse. So if I add the border collapse and then collapse to it, it will basically then do just that. Make sure all the borders just kind of collapse onto themselves so it looks like one solid border. I think, let me do, it doesn't do that for me. So I do a save and I do a refresh, and you'll see that all those borders will just come together as one. Boom. Did it not work? Did I not save it? Did I put it in the wrong place? That very well could have happened. Where do they want it? Oh, they wanted it in inventory. My bad. I put it in the wrong place. Okay, so I come up here, put it in the right place, and I do a save, I do a refresh, and sure enough, notice all the columns come together as one. Notice how the text is up against the border. We're going to basically be fixing that here a little bit. Okay, so to our inventory table columns and headers, this is where we're going to add padding. Remember, padding's on the inside, so we're going to add margins basically on the inside of each cell, and the margins will basically be on the outside. So I do a copy. I come over here and I put that in my table columns and headers. So there's padding, so 3 on the top, 7 to the right, 2 on the bottom, and 7 on the left. I do a save, and again, watch the spacing around each of the text in each cell. When I do a refresh, notice we now have some nice padding in there. I call padding the internal margins around each and every one of these items. Okay, so we're going to create a new style, which is an inventory table headers. So let's just copy it and paste it, and then we'll talk about it. So any table header inside of the inventory class will have a text transform to uppercase. We're going to convert everything to uppercase. We're going to align to the left, so all the text will be aligned to the left on all our table headers. The padding at the top will increase to 5, and the padding at the bottom will be 4. So we'll have a little more padding on the top and a little less on the bottom. So I do a refresh, and sure enough, everything's all uppercase. It's to the left. We got some nice padding at the top and the bottom, and everything is the same. And that's, again, applies to any table header inside of our inventory class. Okay, so we're going to add to our inventory table header, we're going to add a background color. Yeah, can't do that. So this is just to the table header. So we're going to change the background of just the table headers to whatever color that is, the RGB color. Since it's got a high red there, I would say it's probably going to be a little more red than anything else. And then the green is 76 and not much blue, so it's probably going to be more red than anything. The background's going to be a linear gradient to bottom, so it's going to be more dark on the top and then lighter as we go down. Well, I don't know, it might be lighter, but it's basically go from this color to this color, and then the color white is affect all the text. So whenever you usually say color, that's usually talking about the font color. So I save it. Again, watch the table headers up here, watch the background and the color of the font, and boom. Okay, so it's kind of a lighter orange down to a little darker reddish orange kind of a color. And again, notice that the font color is white. Okay. We're going to add two new styles, and these are really cool styles. Let me add them and then we'll talk about it. So it says .inventory. It says anything that's inside of the inventory class on both of these. These only deal with table rows. All table rows that are even are going to have this background color. All table rows that are odd are going to have this background color. Okay, and the table header does not count. So the first one is odd, then it's even, odd, even, odd, even. So I save it. So basically what we're doing, we're getting alternating colors on our rows. And I come over here and do a refresh. Whoop, wrong one. Do a refresh, and there we have it. So it is basically not much difference in color, slightly different than the outside color here, but we can see it's a light orange and back to yellow, light orange. So now it really gives us a definite distinction between each one of the rows. Makes it a little easier to kind of go across. We will add one more item. So this one is going to add a couple of IDs. We've got an ID price, ID rating. We're going to make the width 15%. So let me save it. Let's go over to the table. And if I see an ID, oh, sorry it is. So here's our ID price, ID rating. It's going to make those two columns a little wider. Okay. So when I come over here and do a refresh, these guys should basically, I'm sorry, they may go narrower because I said make the width this. So it could make them narrow, could make them wider, whatever the case may be. When I do a refresh, it made them a little narrower. Okay, but the table stayed the same width. Since we made those two narrower, it made the product side a little wider. So now we got a nice looking table. We basically have, I would have probably right aligned my prices. Just because they're numerics, it makes it easier to kind of look at numerics when they're aligned right. So again, really nice way to style our sheets. I think we learned a couple of new things, the alternating rows, the columns, the call groups. I think we may have used those in 120, but anyways, so some nice formatting of our tables. Okay, so let's continue on. We're going to go to the form now. So this is the form we're going to use. Now it's not a bad looking form. It looks fine. It's very, very usable. Very usable. We got a name, we got an email address, we rate our skills through some radio buttons, we have a drop down, how did you hear about us, and then we have a nice little text box for additional comments, and then a subscribe button. So we are going to change this so that it looks a little more professional. Okay, so let's take a look what we want to do. So we are going to add a subform class to our style sheet. So I come down here and I add a subform, The font size is 1.2 M's. The color of our font is going to be white, and the font family is going to be Tahoma Geneva Sans Serif. So I save it, and I go to the code and see where there is a sub. So here it is right here. Here's our form, has a class called subform. So the entire form is affected by this particular class. So when I come over here and do a refresh, basically changed the font. So the font is completely changed here. Made it a little bigger, a little more easier to read. So it looks good. Nice change. So come down here, we're going to add another one. So let's add it and talk about it. So basically it says any class, a class called label, any class, a class of name label inside of the subform class will display the inline block, and it makes everything kind of a block kind of a thing. The width is going to be 200, and it's going to be vertically aligned to the top. Okay, so let's take a look and see where there's. So let me do a refresh. I don't think we have anything that has a label class in it inside of the subform. I don't see it. So I think if I do a refresh, nothing will change. Yeah, so nothing will change. So let's take a look. I think we have to do one more thing here. Yep, so we're going to add this class label to all of our labels. So here is a label for name. I'm going to add that. I'm going to add it for our email. I'm going to add it for refer. I think that's about it. So again, let's take a look. It says we're going to make it a inline block, so that means it's going to have a distinct box design to it. It's going to be no wider than 200 pixels, and everything's going to be aligned to the top. So when I refresh, this is going to make a big change here. I do a refresh, boom. Notice that everything kind of has a nice, so there's going to be no wider than 200. Okay. Oh, I forgot comments. Aha. Comments didn't come into play there. And there's comments. Let me do a paste. So I noticed it was wider than 200. So I do a refresh, and sure enough, yeah. So notice how the text is now aligned to the top with that, each one of those boxes there. So, and again, it's no wider than 200. So what that does is it takes all these boxes and puts them in line with each other. Well, we want to do one more thing. Notice this radio button kind of has that same, or it basically kind of has its own style. It doesn't look like the others. We want to make it look like the others as well. So we are going to add a span with the class label in there. So I copy that, and I'll put that right in front of the, see where it says this label, rate your apartment for apartment farming skills. So I click right here from the R and rate and do a paste. And then I'm going to put an ending tag at the back, ending span. And so now we've added this class label. Again, this class label only applies to anything inside of the subform class. So I do a save. I come back over here and do a refresh. And again, watch this, rate your apartment farming skills. And voila, everything now is in. So here's my nice display block area. Kind of a nice block right here. Wish I could draw a nice square around that. Okay. Let me see if I can add a okay. There's a way for me to draw, and I don't know how to do that with this tool. Okay, so continuing on, we're going to add to our subform label. We're going to add a text to line right. Let me copy it and paste it. So we're going to line the text to the right. for all of our labels. We're going to make the margin on the right hand side 10 pixels, because if we're going to line everything to the right, we want to make sure that we've got a gap there. We're going to make the font weight bold, and we're going to change the color of our font to whatever color that, well, wow, 255, 255, that's all red, all green, and all blue, and 0.5% transparent. So let's go ahead and add that. And save it, and let's see what that does. Again, it's going to only affect these labels right here. So change it to the right. So all red, all blue, all green, and 5.5% transparent. That's basically what it did. So everything is basically kind of up against each one of the field items, the text boxes, radio buttons, combo box, and multi-line text box. And there's our 10% margin on the right. So we are going to add this guy. Let's add it and let's talk about it. So it basically says this: anything inside of the subform that is an input form type, that is a type submit, that's a button. Okay, this is only going to affect submit buttons. We want the margin left to be 220 pixels. That means we're going to shift that bad boy all the way over to the right. Or at least we're going to shift it over 220 pixels. So I save it and refresh. Again, watch our button down here. Boom. So it's kind of in line with the other form items, the text boxes and radio buttons and so forth. Okay, so let's go ahead and we're going to now add some padding to that. We're going to change the font to 1M, and we're going to change the color of the font to white. Okay, which I kind of question, because when we do this, the padding is 10 and 25 pixels. So it's 10 and 25, which means the top and bottom are 10 and the right and left are 25. Font size is 1M, font color is white. So if I save it and go out here and look, that's got a white background. That's not going to be a very good font color. So when I refresh, uh-oh, what happened? I put it in the wrong spot. I put it in the wrong spot. Let me put it in the right spot. It's supposed to be in the subform input. My bad. Okay, let's save it. Again, watch our button down here. Okay, it's got the white text, really hard to read, so hopefully we're going to change that as well. But notice that we've got a lot bigger margin on the left and the right as we do on the top, because remember it's 10 and 25. Okay, so here we do it. We're going to add a background color, and then we're going to do the background linear. We're going to basically go from one color to the other and make it gradient. Yep. And that will basically, hopefully, it'll be darker than white. It'll be easier to read. And let me save that. And again, let's watch our button down here. It should go gradient. And yes, it did. It went from a dark blue to a light blue. Subscribe's very, very easy to read. And we've got a nice border around there. Okay. That's a nice looking button. Okay. We're still going to, we want to make sure that, okay, we want to have rounded corners. That's what the border radius does. Make rounded corners of our button, and we also would like to have a nice box shadow coming off one of the corners. So we're going to add those two to our submit button. And again, this affects any submit button that's inside of the subform class, which will only happen to have one, but So there's our radius, rounded corners. There is our box shadow. We come over here and refresh, and boom. So not very big rounded corners, but again, and not a big shadow, but nonetheless, it gives it some depth, some 3D look to it, and gives the button a nice, take off those sharp square corners, make it more rounded. Okay. We're going to add another style. We're going to have so it's got to be something to do with the select menu. So anything inside the subform class that is a select, we're going to change the font to 1.2 ems. So let me save it. Let me go over here. Do we have a select? Yep, here we go. Yep. So it's basically it's the select is our radio button. So this is going to affect our radio button options. Okay, so it's going to change the font size there. So watch our radio buttons and see what happens there. I'm sorry, it's our drop down. Sorry, it's our drop down. It made it bigger. Look at that. It really made it a lot bigger, and it makes it stand out a lot more. Again, this would affect any select item inside of the subform class. Okay, so let's go ahead and add another subform input type. So this one says any of our inputs that are text, so these are our text boxes, and any text area within our subform. So this is our inputs, because again, if we look over here, these are input type text, input type text, input type text, and our comment down here is a text area. That's a multi-line text field. So we want this to affect both of those. So both input have a type text, and our text areas are going to have a border radius of 5, so we're going to make them rounded. We're going to have no border. We're going to change the background color to that. We're going to change the color of our font to that. And we'll make the font size to 1.2 ems, and we're going to add a box shadow to it. So watch our text boxes on our text area box down here, and boom. Okay, so it's got no border, kind of a nice light blue text. We got that nice shadowing going on, so really makes it look nice. Now when I click inside of there, I can't tell what box I have selected. Okay, if I click inside one of those boxes, it's really hard to tell where we're currently at. We're going to fix that here in a little bit. We are going to add this to our, what we just added to our input type text box and text area. We're going to add a width of 500 pixels. We're going to make them all the same width. We're going to have padding of 5 pixels on the inside again. Padding's on the inside, margins on the outside. So I add that. So there's our width of 500. We're going to basically see each one of these text boxes become the same length. Yep. And then when I click inside there, we've got a little more padding on around all the sides. Okay. Okay, we're going to add one more text form type. So this one's going to be a little different. And what I mean by that is this affects anything inside of the subform class that is an input type of a text box. Well, that's what we have up here. But we've added this colon focus. What that says is when the focus is on that text box, apply this style. So when I click inside of a text box, that affects this guy. Or when I have the focus on the text area. When I click inside of that text area, that now has the focus and that will basically apply. Background color will turn to white, and the color of our font will turn to black. So that's pretty cool. So I click. Now when I do a refresh, we're not going to see any change. Okay? Looks the same until I click inside of a box. Now I know where I'm at. I can type some text in here. When I tab, it basically goes back to its original color. When I click back in that box, it turns back to white because, again, this has the focus. Wherever the cursor is blinking, the insertion point, that has the focus. The text box has the focus, and so that basically style will apply. So pretty cool. This is really helpful. Really makes us make some changes to our form to let our user know where they're currently at on the form. Okay, so that looks like it's it. If you ever want to look up, so I'm trying to look in this book. There's some really neat new things. I'm going to try to bring those into some of our future videos to kind of show you some of the really neat things you can do with that book. There's a lot of neat new features there. If you want to kind of experiment and play around with yourself, by all means, please do. Again, if you have any questions, make sure you give me a call. See you next time.